Hey guys, Youngblood with you, and welcome to 3.2 being in PTU now. That means we're able to put videos out there, and I wanted to go ahead and first start off with one, basically giving you a quick how-to in regards to doing mining in the game. Now, mining itself is a little bit confusing if you haven't done it before, so ideally what you're going to be doing is picking the only ship in the game capable of doing that gameplay, which is going to be the Prospector. Go ahead and pull that, travel to any of the moons. All three of them have rocks on there that you can actually mine. Selin in general has rocks that are a little bit easier to break, so it's a good kind of learning ground. Daymar has rocks with like tungsten and stuff in it, so it's a little bit harder, but you can end up making more money. So you can really just go to whichever you want, but if you're doing this for the first time, I'd highly suggest you go over to Selin. Once you're in atmosphere, but kind of close to the ground, go ahead and hit tab. That's going to pull up your scanning menu. And then once that's up, you use your left mouse button. You hold it until the reticle shows 100%, release it, and then you'll see a pulse that kind of runs along the ground, which will kind of give you a better idea of what rocks are around that are currently mineable, because not every rock actually is. I don't know if it's your ship telling you that it's not being detected because it has the right amount of resources in it, but that's basically the way that you're going to figure out what you can do. And you'll notice that on the HUD you have these little markers that start to show up, and they don't persist for very long, and sometimes you'll be very close to some, other times you'll be much further away, but you basically just want to keep scanning as you approach, and then when you get near enough, they're going to end up staying on the screen. So now that you've kind of honed in on a rock that you want to start mining, you need to get the mining heads-up display up, as well as getting your mining arm actually out there in front of your ship. So you hit the M button, M as in mining, to actually get the kind of the boom arm projected out a little bit, and then you're going to notice a different heads-up display on your screen. You basically want to take your reticle and hover it over the rock to see what it's made of, and it'll take just a second to scan and analyze. By the way, when you're looking at this, only focus on the blue reticle, not the other items on the HUD through all of this, because it doesn't matter where your lasers or the indicators are pointing. The reticle is the part that needs to stay on the rock, regardless if we're talking about scanning or regardless if we're talking about actually mining. The actual destination that you need to have your cursor over is over that reticle, otherwise it's not going to work. What you want to look for is rocks that have a high percentage of good stuff, like tungsten. So pick your rock, ideally a larger one that has higher percentages than other ones in the area. Is it worthwhile to travel halfway across the moon to find one that's got a 0.5% difference? Probably not, because your time is worth stuff too. But if you want to keep in mind, let's say you've got 32 SEU of cargo space on this on the Prospector, and you've only found a rock that's just at 1% of the good stuff, like tungsten or titanium or aluminum or whatever. You're going to be saying to yourself, okay, well, I'm only going to be able to sell 1 SCU of goods when I get back. So the percentage makes a big difference in what you end up earning later on, which is why scanning and things like that type of gameplay are going to be important later. So you should be on the fracture mode by default, and there's two different modes. There's fracture and extraction. And there's going to be quite a few elements on the HUD that you need to pay attention to, and they're all slide scales. So you're going to see the laser throttle, which is actually controlled by your mouse wheel. By default, it's at 100%. 0% is essentially no power behind it. And what you need to be able to do is be ready to adjust it by scrolling your mouse wheel up and down, depending on the rock energy level and that overcharge sensor. The rock energy level, again, is a 0 to 100 scale, and you're going to notice 3 sections, one blue, one green, and one red. Blue is what's below the necessary throttle to fracture the rock. Green is the sweet zone, and if you keep it there, your fracture sensor will show that the rock is getting closer and closer to breaking. Red is too much throttle, and you're overcharging the rock, making an explosion that could end up damaging your ship more likely, and means that you're not able to get any resources out of that rock because you basically blew it apart instead of actually getting it into a mineable state. You need to monitor the overcharge sensor to not push too far, but if you stay in the green on that rock energy level, you're not going to be overcharging the rock. The fracturing sensor shows how close you are to breaking the rock apart into extractable parts. Again, it's a 0 to 100 scale. Overcharge sensor shows how close you are to exploding the rock, making it unmineable. Again, that's a 0 to 100 scale. You shouldn't be charging up that overcharge sensor unless you're giving the rock too much power through your laser throttle. And then you also have a cargo capacity indicator, basically how much of your 32 SCU of ore space in the saddlebags you have remaining. So you can mine in a couple different ways. You can land or you can mine while hovering. It doesn't really matter. I kind of personally prefer to do it while hovering because you get a little bit more agility and you kind of get more space. You know, you get some gimbal to your mining arm, but it's not much. And it allows you to kind of zoom around and do things a little bit better. That being said, though, for those that are using like mouse and keyboard, I think, or joysticks, for example, like it doesn't really matter what your control scheme is, but you want to make sure that you're kind of switching over to the mouse at least to be a little bit more accurate. Using the joystick, you lose a little bit of that fine control, and if you're not really close to the rock, it's going to be a little bit harder to keep it on target. So what you want to do is you want to hit the left mouse button to start your mining laser. You want to start to spin the mouse wheel up until you start seeing the rock energy level climb, or if you're starting at 100%, you can keep it there until you scroll it down. As your slider is approaching the green zone, you want to start to slowly roll your mouse wheel back to lower the throttle. For the record, though, like one click starts the laser, and then you click it again to turn it off. You don't necessarily need to hold down the mouse button in order to actually keep the laser going. And you want to really keep an eye on what percentages equate to green for that rock that you're currently mining. And then just kind of roll your wheel up or down to keep it on that percentage. You know, you don't want to necessarily just say, okay, well, like 40% laser is going to break this rock, you know, because as you get closer to fracture, you're going to need less and less laser. So you want to really just say, all right, I need to be at 40%. I'm going to move my mouse wheel accordingly to make sure that I'm there. So for example, if you get into the red, back it off quickly. If you fall back into the blue, you're going to start losing your fracture percentage and you're going to have to ramp it back up. But again, it's better to play it cautious. It's better than blowing up the rock. It's worth noting that you're almost always going to have to start high, like in the 50 to 80% of throttle range to get it to climb, sometimes even needing 100% to start on the harder and larger rocks. You could also try getting closer and kind of moving the cursor around to hit different parts of the rock to help get it speeding up and going a little bit faster. But in general, harder rocks that have like a higher fracture rating are going to take more throttle, and the bigger the rock, you're going to need closer to 100% to get everything started. But again, even on the bigger rocks, you're going to be scrolling back down into much, much lower percentages by the time you actually blow that thing apart. Once you are in the green zone and the fracturing starts, you need to be able to make very quick adjustments. So, you know, that's not a time to tune out or pay attention to something else. Just really stay focused on the fracture sensor and your rock sensor as well. And then after the rock ends up fracturing, it's going to break apart, and you're going to see kind of pieces fall off. And it's going to be a real casual kind of, I guess, disassembly of the larger rock. You're going to want to hit the right mouse button to swap to the extraction mode. And rock that you can extract is going to be outlined in purple. Rock that you need to break down further is going to be outlined in orange. After you do get it broken down and you see some spots that are outlined in purple, you're going to want to get your reticle over the purple outlined rock and hit the left mouse button to engage the laser and keep it on the purple outlined rock. Now, once it disappears, move on to the next rock, because when you break something down, you're going to end up seeing probably 3 or 4 different things that you can extract, sometimes many more. A lot of times on larger rocks, though, you're going to break it down, and you'll have a little bit of extractable rock, but then the rest is going to be still outlined in orange. That just means it needs to be broken down further before you can extract it, and in those situations, I would suggest that you clean up the purple rock with the extraction laser, then hit the right mouse button and switch back over to the fracture mode, and then repeat the process of breaking it all down. Now, it is worth noting that the smaller the rock gets, the lower the throttle has to be to achieve the fracture. So if you're having to break something down twice, you're not going to necessarily want to start at 100% then. You're going to probably want to start at like 50 or 60% because the fracture is going to happen much, much faster and you need much less laser to actually do that. Eventually, you're going to notice that your cargo capacity is 100%, or basically if you're just done mining at that time, you want to go ahead and hit M to turn off your mining mode, and then you're going to want to fly to an outpost or a station. Once you land, there's going to be some wall-mounted locations you can select to sell your goods. For example, at Port Alizar, it's on the wall. It's on the wall kind of between the ASOP terminals and the admin desk. There's one on each side of that opening, and it's on the side of the admin desk. Once you do that, it's like selling at any other location. You basically want to select your ship and sell your goods. The prices right now are okay. They're not great. You're going to kind of see different results as you do this, and I think as more locations open up, you're going to see differences. But it doesn't take all that long to mine a rock and fill up the prospector and get 500 UEC or something like that. And it is new gameplay and it's interesting. So hopefully that gives you guys the information you need to know in regards to mining. If you have questions on this, I've done quite a bit of it in the PTU or in the ETF phases. So, ask the questions. I'm happy to help. Otherwise, stay tuned. We got a lot more stuff coming soon, including some quantum travel stuff, some ship walkthroughs, and a few other items. So, again, if you have questions, get them in. Otherwise, stay tuned for more. Have yourselves a wonderful day and take care.